Anti-gunners like to say that an armed citizenry is totally unnecessary and a relic of a distant bygone past. After all, we have a military and police today, right? But we know that's not enough. The point of the Second Amendment is, among other things, to repel enemies both outside and inside the country. A scenario, by the way, that Ukrainians are getting a first look at right at this moment. Now, if you've been keeping up with the recent potential world war over there in Russia and Ukraine, you know that Russia has invaded Ukraine. And you probably also have noticed a flurry of legislative activity by the Ukrainian parliament involving this. One of the biggest priorities, they passed a bill liberalizing all gun ownership for all citizens. They stripped back all of that red tape and basically said, please help us defend our country from the Russian invaders. They even gave citizens weapons. What's interesting is that our own founding fathers, in particular, an early famous Supreme Court justice by the name of Justice Joseph Story, understood the importance of armed citizens and an armed citizenry in thwarting foreign invaders. Find out why next. Hey folks, I'm Mark and welcome to the Four Boxes Diner. Before we begin, if you support the Second Amendment, please hit the subscribe button and help us spread the intellectual and the scholarly information in this video and beyond to all members of the Second Amendment community. We'd appreciate it. Okay, today's video I want to talk about the fact that over 270 MPs in the Ukrainian parliament just voted to approve a bill, a law that allows Ukrainian citizens the right to keep and bear arms. And what exactly are the precise details of this? Well, here's the explanatory note. Quote, the document regulates public relations arising in the field of enforcement of the right of individuals and legal entities in Ukraine to carry civilian firearms, ammunition, as well as products structurally similar to weapons and ammunition. Oh, that sounds familiar, carrying arms. Well, let's keep going over there. Okay, the bill also defines the legal regime of ownership of civilian firearms, establishes the basic rights and responsibilities of individuals and legal entities for the production, acquisition, possession, alienation, carrying, transportation, repair, use of civilian firearms and ammunition, etc. So on the eve of Russia invading their country, Ukrainian politicians realized a hard fact. They're down a lot of soldiers compared to the Russians. They don't have an army large enough to defend their country from an invasion from Russia in all likelihood. The citizens in the Ukraine will have nothing or not enough to repel the invading land and air forces of Vladimir Putin. And what did they do in response, or what should they do in response? Well, the Ukrainians are doing what they should have done, in my opinion, a long time ago. They're giving their citizens the right to defend themselves, and many Ukrainians are eager to do so. As described by Ukrainian President Zelensky, we will give weapons to anyone who wants to defend the country. Be ready to support Ukraine in the squares of our cities. Wow, this is a reassuring remark from a country that has had strict firearms laws and low levels of legal civilian firearms ownership for a long while. It's too bad this sort of idea, this notion came to light literally on the night before they got invaded by the Russians. As Samuel Johnson once said, quote, when a man knows he is to be hanged in a fortnight, it concentrates his mind wonderfully. Now in Ukraine, their minds are really concentrated now, as well they should be, because they have to protect their country from foreign invaders. And with Russia knocking on their door for the past few years, you would have thought that they would have wanted to be better prepared earlier, but they held on apparently until they literally had no choice but to ask for help. But we're going to talk perhaps more about this in other videos of lessons we can learn as Americans from the experience of the Ukraine dealing with this Russian invasion. Now, this about-face in Ukraine may seem like a victory for supporters of the Second Amendment's right to keep and bear arms. But in reality, as I see it, this situation in Ukraine is really quite sad. I mean, yes, it is valiant that the citizens of Ukraine are now allowed to carry arms and defend their country. And, you know, I applaud them for that and trying to protect their national sovereignty and their national borders. That's understandable, and I hope they successfully use their right to self-defense. But you see, the images that I'm seeing of several hundred Ukrainian politicians passing a bill at the very last minute, right before an invasion, in order to give their citizens the privilege to defend their country with firearms is, in my view, almost pitiable. I mean, is that all the notice you're going to give millions of people that live in the Ukraine? One night? Why not a week? Why not from their founding? Now, we would never never have had this problem here in the United States. And although they'll try their best, people are going to die in the Ukraine, okay, because of their lack of civilian armament, in my opinion. They're kind of defenseless, and even those that get guns now, that's great, they're going to try to use them, but if they don't have experience with them, they haven't been trained, they haven't even gone to the gun range with these things, how effective are they going to be? Because it's not just having the gun, it's also knowing how to use it safely, use it responsibly, and use it effectively, okay? And if you just get a gun for the first time in your life, without training, I'm not sure how well that's going to go. It's probably better than nothing, but not as good as it could have been. And again, why is all of this? It's because, in my view, the Ukrainian politicians apparently love their gun control too much. I mean, I should mention this craziness. I'm not sure people have covered this part of the Ukraine bill that closely, but even the Ukrainian politicians could not resist adding a big caveat to their gun bill as well. They literally put gun control into an emergency measure that armed the people to defend the country against the Russian invasion. Here, in my view, are unsavory additives to this bill. Quote, "It is proposed to develop a procedure for creating and maintaining the Unified State Register of Civilian Firearms," close quote. Now, don't the Ukrainians know that such a gun registry or civilian gun registry, if it's created, would be used by a powerful invader like Russia to track down every gun owner in the country and kill them, right? Or imprison them? I mean, have they not learned their history in the least? Inquiring minds want to know. And I should mention that also, quote, "The document also defines the concept of weapon-free zones and regulates the temporary import and export of civilian firearms and ammunition to and from Ukraine," close quote. Literally, I mean, this is crazy in some ways. It's hard to believe that with the Russians literally firing rockets at their homeland, the Ukrainian politicians are still thinking about what to do when this all blows over with gun control. I mean, maybe get your head in the game and realize that you're not going to have a country soon if you don't defend it successfully, and yet they're still worrying about gun registries and gun control. To me, it's absurd. Now, I want to recall a wonderful, impactful quote by Joseph Story. Joseph Story is one of our most famous founding fathers. Here's what he said about the militia and its role in protecting America. Quote, "The militia is the natural defense of a free country against sudden foreign invasions." I repeat, sudden foreign invasions, domestic insurrections, and domestic usurpations of power by rulers, close quote. Now, watching this exact scenario unfold in Ukraine makes this quote by Justice Joseph Story, one of our founders, just roll off the tongue. The militia is composed of individuals that can defend themselves, and it still works. And it's working now in the Ukraine. We'll see if it actually effectively works, but that's effectively what they're doing in Ukraine, which is to create militias. Probably too late in the day. We will find out how it all plays out. Regardless, James Madison's writings in the 46th Federalist paper literally spells out what's going on in Ukraine right now. This is what Madison wrote in the Federalist Papers, quote, "Notwithstanding the military establishments in the several kingdoms of Europe, which are carried as far as the public resources will bear, the governments are afraid to trust the people with arms. But were the people to possess the additional advantages of local governments chosen by themselves, who could collect the national will and direct the national force, and of officers appointed out of the militia by these governments and attached both to them and to the militia, it may be affirmed with the greatest assurance that the throne of every tyranny in Europe would be speedily overturned in spite of the legions which surround it," close quote. Powerful language from James Madison, the author of the United States Constitution, about the importance of an armed citizenry in a free society. As it turns out, nothing has changed. The nations of Europe are still loath to trust their people with arms. They view their people, in my opinion, as subjects and not citizens, and that's why they won't trust them with firearms. And that's why these stopgap measures offered by Ukrainian politicians may be too little, too late, in my opinion. Only history will teach us what happens over there. But of course, it's a very different story here in America. This quote from James Madison, again, the author of the Constitution, rings true today as it did back in our founding. Quote, "Besides the advantage of being armed, which the Americans possess over the people of almost every other nation. The existence of subordinate governments to which the people are attached and by which the militia officers are appointed forms a barrier against the enterprises of ambition more insurmountable than any which a simple government of any form can admit of. A great quote again from Madison. If you lived in Ukraine right now, you would wish you'd had the Second Amendment for quite some time. Because not only would you have an armed population, that armed population would have been trained, they would have known how to use their firearms and use them effectively in self-defense. As to whether or not the Ukrainians can, get up to speed fast enough, given the Russian invasion, only time will tell. As we watch the events unfold over in Eastern Europe, let's all recognize how fortunate we are as Americans that have the benefit of the Second Amendment's right to keep and bear arms. It's a reminder to the anti-gunners. The need to arm civilians to defend one's country is not an impossibility in the modern era. It's happening right now, right here, at this very moment in Europe itself with the Ukraine. Defending against tyranny, both within and outside one's country, is only possible if the population retains the natural right to keep and bear arms. Settling for anything less is, in my opinion, giving a green light to would-be dictators and foreign invaders to come on in and do harm to America. Indeed, giving up that right is simply setting up and laying the groundwork for invasions by hostile powers. And I think Vladimir Putin understands this and probably calculated this when he made his unfortunate decision to invade Ukraine. So again, thanks for watching us here at the Four Boxes Diner, where we serve hot, fresh Second Amendment news and analysis. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe to help us spread the word. And we'll see you soon again here at the Four Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.